Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Strange Oddities podcast. We are back live tonight. We had guests that couldn't schedule live on our last show, so we had to do a pre-recorded kind of thing with our last guest that we had. But that's going to air December 14th, next Tuesday, guys. I'm excited to announce that Lou Greco and Carlo Russo from the Uncle Louie Variety Show. It was a blast to have them on as an interview on the Strange Oddities podcast. It was really funny. If you guys want a great laugh, they're Italian comedians. It's going to air and schedule December 14th, Tuesday night at 8 p.m. So you guys don't want to miss that night. Let's get all the boring stuff out of the way, guys, because I have a really exciting guest tonight. I want to introduce to everybody. I think everybody in the paranormal community is going to enjoy this guest. There's a lot of people that are into what she does, and there's a lot of people out there that want to learn it. And I'm going to introduce her. I'm going to give a little bio to everybody to give a little background about what she does. But let's get the boring stuff out of the way, as always. If you haven't subscribed, guys, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're at 191 subscribers, almost at 200 in under 55 episodes. If we can get 200, that'd be awesome. So guys, please subscribe to the show. I appreciate it. We got a lot of views on YouTube. We simultaneously stream live on Facebook and YouTube at the same time, so that's where you can watch the show live. If you can't catch the show, no problem. It'll always be on YouTube. Catch it anytime if you miss it. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and introduce this lovely lady that we have as a guest before I ramble on about strange oddities. Enough about that stuff. All right. I'm excited to introduce our guest. Her name is Reverend Dr. Stephanie Red Feather, is a divine feminine change agent and champion of empath, an award-winning author of the #1 international bestseller, The Evolutionary Empath. We'll talk about her book later tonight during the show. Her passion is to help fellow sensitive souls break out of the energetic jail and fully embrace the soul's evolution and divine expression as co-creators of New Earth consciousness. As a shamanic minister, workshop facilitator, and prolific creator of spiritual tools, Stephanie has helped thousands to connect with their sacred self and heal their human wounds. Stephanie is the founder and director of Blue Star Temple, an online resource for spiritual seekers to learn about their energetic skills, hone empathic abilities, access spiritual knowledge, and connect with cosmic consciousness. Her specialties include masculine dash feminine, balance, boundaries, energy, hygiene, shadow work, shamanic consciousness, embodiment, and celestial mysteries. Above all, she honors her clients and students' personal truth and experience while facilitating deeper initiation into their own inner mysteries. Stephanie's life has been an unusual fusion of creativity, spirituality, and hard science. First attending a performing arts school in adolescence, the earning a degree in applied mathematics before becoming an Air Force officer, which I told her earlier on. I totally am thankful for her service to her country, our country. As everybody knows, I'm a patriot. So she holds a master's and doctorate in shamanic studies from Venus Rising University and has a Mesa carrier in the Pachacuti Mesa tradition. Hopefully, I said that right. I didn't want to botch that word. Of Peru since 2005. Her uncommon talent of bridging left and right brain words amplifies her ability to make esoteric concepts accessible and practical. So, guys, without further delay, I want to go ahead and bring her in. Here we go. We have Reverend Dr. Stephanie Red Feather. Welcome to the Strange Oddities podcast. That was I didn't read the whole bio, but they can go to your website and read the whole thing. But welcome to the show. Thanks for doing the show. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Matthew. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. It's kind of been a couple of months in the making. I've had her lined up for tonight. We've had some scheduling and some moving around of dates and stuff, but we finally have her, and I'm excited because a lot of people in the paranormal community want to learn about empathic abilities because there's a lot of people coming more forward about, diving into their own abilities. And I guess after the paranormal stuff being more aware, being more out there, so people are more aware of their abilities, so they want to know where can they learn this stuff. And I- sh- she's a great person to contact and go to her website and learn from. She's got a great book out. Um, how about we start off telling our listeners and viewers a little bit, how did you get started? How did you figure out, like, I have these abilities, I want to teach others about them, and like, how did you get involved?
Yeah. As with most people, through a difficult process of my own personal spiritual awakening, so it's kind of like we have to go through our own dark night and,
Sure.
and go into the underworld and then, emerge finally. And so, as you mentioned, I was in the Air Force for 10 years. And when I left, I started my own financial planning business, which I thought would be my next career for 5 or 10 or 15 years. And I quit in less than 6 months because I hated it
Aw.
and lost about $25,000 in the process because I didn't stay in long enough to recoup what I had invested. And that really threw me, full force into my own spiritual awakening. I had no tools. I had no idea what was happening to me. It was about a 5-year period that I have termed the spiritual crucible because just like a crucible, I was getting cooked down and transformed into another substance. And I felt like I lived about 100 years in the space of 5, because I just, I have a very strong will. For people who play with astrology, I have 4 planets in Scorpio. So I was really good at by godding it. Let me just shove that square peg in that round hole and I'm going to, make this
Right.
happen. And spirit was like, no, you're going to die. You're going to die to your old self
Aw.
and you're going to have something entirely new emerge from the ashes. And so I was, the classic case of kicking and screaming and, having no idea what was happening. And so when I finally got to the other side of it and kind of stumbled out and went, whew, and looked around and like, well, the world's still here. Okay. I survived. I realized that I had gained something. And through that period, I of course found a deeper sense of myself, but I realized that if I can make somebody else's time in the spiritual crucible shorter, easier, if I could help explain the subtleties of what's happening, if I could support them, if I could give them tools, then, that was the calling that was growing in my heart. And so in 2007, I stood up my business and I've been supporting people, in their spiritual awakening and especially focusing on empaths, because part of my awakening was recognizing that, oh yeah, I'm an empath. So that's how it all got started.
Nice, nice. So as you're going through this like living hell of figuring out what to do with your life, and you finally discovered that, what were some of the first tools you came across yourself that helped you guide you on the path that you needed?
Yeah. Well, there's several things kind of happening, like spirit planting things in my path to support me. And so, I first want to give props to the people in my life that gave me a framework. My Reiki, I had 2 different Reiki masters that I studied with.
Right.
My chiropractor early on, who was into a lot of these esoteric things. My mentor, all of these people, I was almost desperately clinging to their shirt tails because, once I got through the really acute, painful part, all of a sudden I was just voracious. It's like I wanted to read everything I could. And, back then there was not the number of even books, videos, YouTube channels, all the resources that there were now. And
Sure.
so So it was it wasn't really a linear process of I learned this and then I learned this and then I learned this. It was kind of this everything happening at once. But one of the concepts that feels really important to share is the idea of surrendering, which, like I said, I was all about make it happen, no, fight, all that kind of stuff. And so a big part of my spiritual awakening was also reclaiming my feminine, because it's the feminine energy that understands how to be in that still void space that I had no clue how to be in. And so, that was an early on lesson amongst others.
Sure. Nice. We have a lot of listeners who are in the paranormal community. What are some of the things that you can give advice to those who are just starting out, that are figuring out kind of like along the same experience as you, who are probably going through their own living hells and different things they're going through? What would you recommend them to kind of, where would you tell them to start off with?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I want to say, I'm gonna frame this within the conversation of being an empath, and that is, you are not alone, and there's nothing wrong with you, and you are not crazy, and you are not an anomaly, and you might be the black sheep of your family, but you're that way on purpose. One of the things that helps me and that I provide in my book, The Evolutionary Empath, is that bigger picture perspective. And so my belief is that empaths are here to help humanity ascend to the next level of consciousness. We come into our body with a heightened set of sensitivities, a refined energetic physiology, a slightly different value system and way of perceiving the world. But there's a quote in the movie Moneyball that says, the first guy through the wall always gets bloodied. And so, all of us that are empaths right now on the planet, we are the first wave. We are the first ones through the wall, getting bloodied, cutting the path for the ones coming behind us so it's easier for them. And so, for me, I find that bigger picture context helpful, because now I can locate myself inside of that and know that I have a purpose and that my life has meaning.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that stands out for me personally, because I have abilities myself, my wife has abilities too. We're both paranormal investigators. When I was younger, I was more into like the research and the equipment. I was into the investigative skills as far as like doing the interview work and all the everything but learning about my own abilities. But when I finally started to later in life figure out that I had these abilities, because some people realize they're born with it or they're just closed off to it. And then I think for me, because I was in the paranormal field investigating for so long, I was finally getting in tune with the things that were going on with me. And I couldn't believe the amount of stuff that was, again, it was like exactly how you described it. It's like a living hell because you don't know what to do with it. And I just kind of figured out for myself is like, I don't want to do it like how some psychic mediums go out and, they do readings for like, hundreds of dollars. They go out, they do readings, all different types of readings and stuff. And I didn't want to go down that path. I wanted to go down to like, I thought of it as like challenging myself. And if I could help people like get a message to their loved ones or whatever readings I could get for people that would help them, that would be my reward. Like, and I work in a school district. I'm a security guard, and imagine having these abilities and walking into an environment with all those emotions all around you from the children and the staff. And I keep telling people, you have no idea how much I have to put up a whole big shield around me to protect my emotions from getting attacked from all these other energies and stuff. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is I'm just going to hold up my book if I may.
Yeah.
The Evolutionary Empath, the book that I keep referring to, there's two parts to it. And so one part is kind of what I alluded to, the bigger picture context of why we're here. And it includes, a definition and, why we're an anomaly in Western civilization, Western medicine, etc. The other half of the book is all the practical application, 3D, real world, rubber meets the road. How the bleepity bleep do I live in this world as an empath? And so it's just what you're talking about. It's how to create boundaries and how to create protection, how to manage your energy field, and all of those vital tools that every sensitive soul needs to be able to live a thriving life and not just get by or endure.
Right. Yeah. So it's like, it's funny because I work not only with all these energies and emotions, right? Picture all that going on, and you have somebody with these abilities, but also working in a building that also has quote unquote activity from historic energies that have been there a long time. So I have that on top of what I have to deal with all day long. So when I come home, I'm like, whew.
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
So
It's like,
yeah,
where's the magic waterfall that you stand under and, kind of pull like the old water closet and just.
right, exactly. Because like and some people would tell me like, well, why do you think you like your school is haunted? Why do you think a place like that would be haunted? I said it's not haunted per se. Some buildings are haunted because of their historic past, and people still come and visit it, or depending what happened to those people during that time period. But like the environment I work in, the building harnesses all that energy and emotion from all different types of living people, not so much the spiritual people, but the emotions and energy from the living that you feel is incredible. And you just sit there and you're like, all right, whoa. you know
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What age group is in that?
Right now I'm in an elementary school. Before I was at the high school, and then I moved over to an elementary school. I found that the high school was a lot more like energy kind of stuff than where I am now, because with the little ones it's not so much.
Yeah. Hormones amplify everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, as an empath, like like the story I brought up of me, would you say that that's like similarities of how you dealt with things?
Yeah, well, and let me make a distinction that we are an unconscious empath
Hmm.
until we are a conscious empath. And so for the first 30, ish years of my life, I was an unconscious empath. I was sensitive, but I had no idea.
Right.
And so almost always we live from the unhealthy aspects of our empathic qualities when it's
Right.
unconscious, right? So
Right.
so these sensitivities, when we don't know we have them, when we don't have any frame of reference and no tools, then we fall into codependence. We feel everybody else's stuff and think that it's ours. We feel responsible for how everybody else feels. We, take on all of these things. We cannot figure out where we end and the next person begins, right? It's very
Right.
difficult to be able to hear our own selves and feel our center because our superpower is blending and merging with other people.
Mm.
So once you become conscious, after you go, oh, holy cow, and you kind of have that moment,
Yeah.
then it's really about starting to activate these tools and filling up your toolbox and consciously engaging with the energies as opposed to unconsciously being held sway by them.
Right. Yeah. My wife and I, we just recently. You would think we would have done it a long time ago, but there was a lot of procrastinating for a long time of not doing it, which we're all guilty of as humans. We're all human, but we finally decided to go with to learn about how to connect with our spirit guides and stuff like that, which was really neat. It was very interesting. Um, well. we decided to do that ourselves, but for our own personal interest in it. What about the empaths that want to learn? What are some of the things that you would tell them? Like, what kind of books, what kind of training? I know, like for the spirit guide class, they say to meditate. Is meditation a big part of thing for you, or some of the tools that you teach people? Is meditation a big thing?
Meditation is a piece of the bigger whole. While I can definitely fly out there in the ethers with the best of them and play out in the cosmos, one of the things that is one of the pillars of my work is I always bring it down to a practical level. And so in terms of what I would point people towards, what I tend to find is the gifts are already there. People are already aware to some degree of what their personal ability is, whether it's, seeing and communicating with the dead, or communicating with animals, or seeing energy, or, all of these multitudes of ways that these gifts can express. So I don't tend to focus so much on developing and honing the gift
Okay.
as I do helping them focus on how to manage being in their body.
Okay.
And because what I find is a lot of people, especially in the beginning, when they're just awakening, to the fact that they're an empath, is how do I not take on other people's stuff? How do I listen? How do I know that what I'm hearing is mine versus somebody else's? How do I say no? I'm a recovering people pleaser. So no was not in my vocabulary for a period of time.
Right.
So I really tend to focus more on those aspects,
Okay.
because once those foundational pieces get established, then the gift can express more freely, or people feel because they can feel overwhelmed. It's like if there's no distinction between you and me, then everything is just noise and overwhelm. And so one of the chapters in my book is actually called "You and I Are One, but we are not the same." And it alludes to the fact that, in spirit form,
Mm-hmm.
we're all part of the same cosmic goo, right? We're all made of the same God stuff. We're all part of the same consciousness.
Right.
But as we individuate, there is a difference between you and me, and that difference is okay. It is okay that there is a place where I end and you begin. That doesn't mean that at the higher level that oneness isn't true, but we can't, there's this balance of how to feel and know the oneness without losing the self. Because otherwise, that's part of what the Earth School is about. Why would we come into a human body in the first place if it wasn't to have those types of individual human experiences?
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. I need a class like that because I need to learn that stuff myself. I would totally enjoy learning more about how to, get in deep with myself and how to set those boundaries up. Because let's face it, like sometimes when I go on an investigation and I'm sitting there and there are moments where I get so emotional. Like there were times where there's one location we investigated, right? And I'm sitting on the floor frozen, and all of a sudden I have all these emotions hitting me left and right, and I just like freeze, and I couldn't even move. It was so powerful, and I was like crying and emotional, and we were in the dark, and my other investigators were on the other end of the hallway, and I was like, I can't get up. I need help off the floor, and I just like was in such of like didn't know how to like get out of it,
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I
it's
totally get it.
yeah, yeah. That was one of the toughest moments as an empath for me personally because it was just so strong and emotional, and it just overcomes you out of nowhere.
Right. Yeah. And if you haven't been with yourself long enough to be able to distinguish what is yours and what isn't yours, it's easy to feel like those emotions are your own and to think you're crazy because you feel like your emotions are bouncing up and down and back and forth and you're like, what's wrong with me? Well, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just acutely feeling the stuff of the ones around you.
Yeah, exactly. So tell a little bit to our listeners and viewers, how did you get into writing about the work that you do? You have a best-selling book, and there's a lot of information in it. How did you start gathering the information for that, and what got you going to say, I want to put this out there?
Yeah. Well, my business has always been about supporting others, and I've done that through one-on-one client work, through teaching. And so I had taught a lot of empath-related classes. And so that was where I started, is I just gathered all of my material, and then connected with a couple of people who have writing experience in the industry just to help kind of get me started. And then the information actually began to organize itself, right? Because the way you present something in a workshop is going to be different than how you want to present it in a book. And so I really, I called upon my spirit guides every time I sat down to write to really be a clear channel and to bring through what wanted to come through. And so my personal process is very much a combo of left brain and right brain, right? So some of it is just very didactic, gathering my data and making lists and put, all of this stuff together. And then other pieces are almost like pure channeling, because there's a couple of chapters in the book that I didn't know I was going to write until I just started writing. And then the stuff started coming at me. The book reorganized itself at least 3 times. The title changed at least 3 times. And I've been doing this long enough now that I think that's just kind of my process, is my spirit guides give me enough information to get me started. And then as I start getting steeped in the frequency of the work, then the vibration starts to raise. And when it raises, the focus changes, the title changes. And then I play in that for a while, and then the frequency raises and the focus changes and the title changes. And so that's, it kind of builds as I go along with the process. Yeah. So
nice.
Yeah.
I want to share with our listeners, where can they get your book? As far as is it on your website, which I'm sure it is. There's ways of getting your book, and on Amazon, I'm sure it's available there, or
Yes. Yeah. My website is bluestartemple.org. And so if you want a signed copy with a personalized inscription, you can order directly from me. But it is traditionally published, which means you can go to any online, bookseller. So not just Amazon, you can go to Barnes & Noble, you can go to my publisher's site, which is Inner Traditions, Goodreads, et cetera, et cetera. There's also an audiobook. And it's my voice that you'll hear on the audiobook. You can go to, most of the major book sellers, like spiritual, new age types of bookstores still carry it. It's still a bestseller for the publisher. It's been published in several languages, Dutch, German, Hungarian. So it's really, it's starting to make its way out there. So I have no attachment. It's just, you can get it from me if you want a signed copy. Otherwise, get it from, wherever appeals to you.
Nice. I'm going to share the website with our audience. Here we go. Window. As long as I can get this right. Here we go. See if everybody can see that.
That's me.
Right. Yeah, there you go. All right. I didn't lose anybody. Great. That's always we get afraid of dropping calls, or
right.
we hit the wrong button. But yeah, it's guys, it's bluestartemple.org. Are there instructions on here where they can get some of your workshops or anything like that on your website?
Yeah, there's a couple. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of the homepage, there's a couple of buttons there where you can get my book, and also my most recent work, which came out right before Thanksgiving, which is the Empath Activation Cards, which is an oracle deck. So you can get both of those there. But the best way to stay in touch with, my products and workshops and events and everything coming up is to get on my mailing list. And so, on there on the homepage, I have a free gift. That's 11 self-care must-haves for empaths, light workers, star seeds, and way showers. And so you get that free gift if you sign up on my newsletter list. And that's the best way to stay in touch with everything I've got going on.
Nice. Cool. In the direction or path that you chose to go down, what has been some of the toughest things that you found as an empath for yourself personally? Is there anything that stood out that were kind of like crazy? Are there any stories you'd like to share with our audience that would make them feel not so crazy, that they're not alone? And
Yeah. Yeah. So early on in my spiritual awakening, in this period of time where I was lost, I didn't know what was happening, I was still in a place of forcing it. In my old house in Illinois, in the kitchen, are 2 black marks on the ceiling. Because I came home one day from, I don't know, it was some kind of spiritual gathering, a Reiki share or something. And, I spent plenty of time, in those first few years cussing at God. And that was one of those moments. And I came home and I was so pissed because I was so confused and I didn't understand what was happening. And I'm just ranting and I kick my shoes off in the kitchen, and you're just mad, you're just like, rah, rah. And they both went straight up to hit the ceiling and made 2 little black smudge marks.
Oh, wow.
So there's evidence of my little hissy fit house in Illinois. So,
Nice.
I mean, I can laugh about it now and I can be jovial, but I'm telling you, I know what it's like to be in those moments of crawling on the floor, absolutely sobbing because you're overwhelmed, because you don't know what to do next. You don't know if you're making the right choice. You're scared to death. Everything that you know is falling away. And I know what those moments feel like.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I mean for that's just crazy. But I've been there myself, because there was one night my wife and I share a little story, something similar that happened to me. I was at my computer desk and my wife was watching TV, and the computer was in the living room where our TV is. So we're in the same room, and I'm just sitting there doing my thing, and I had a flashlight, like a military style flashlight, so it's heavy, and it's sitting on my second shelf of the computer, and I'm just sitting there doing my thing, and the flashlight flies off the second shelf, nearly misses my head, and flew across the room behind me. And my wife seen it just out of the corner of her eye. She was like, "What just flew off the shelf?" And I said, "The flashlight almost just hit my head." I said, "That would have hurt." And if that would have just fallen, it would have fell like this way, because it was a heavy flashlight. So the gravity of the weight of the flashlight should have just fell forward. But this thing literally flew past my head for me to be like, "Whoa." And it's, I think, was one of those moments where I was explaining to my wife, because we were studying at that time a lot about PK and how our emotions can manifest activity because of having these abilities. And maybe it was just a moment of our emotions of whatever was going on at the time that flashlight flew off the second shell. And it wasn't so much like a spiritual thing, because what we do sometimes, spirits come home with us, and we get hitchhikers that come home with us once in a while that we don't want. But we thought maybe that was more of like one of those moments where, like, oh, that could have just been us.
Yeah. Yeah, it is amazing how everything in the universe is sentient and communicating.
Yeah, to say the least. Yeah, that's one way of putting it. But I just, that moment, I thought, man, if I would have gotten hit by that, I would have had a big swell in my head.
Yeah, that was like a warning shot across the bow is kind of what that feels like.
Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself too, and I was like being funny about it with my wife when I said, "You sure that wasn't coming from you? Were you mad at me about something?"
Right.
It's funny, but yeah. So those are some of the things that like I hope people can like by us sharing these things with our audience and our listeners that they're not crazy, they're not alone. These things do happen
Mhm.
because of their abilities that they're unaware of, and
Yeah.
when they're awakening these feelings, it could just feel like, oh my God, what just happened?
Right, right.
You know?
Yeah, and you know, everybody, their gifts are going to show up in a slightly different lane. You know, like I discovered early on through just practicing Reiki and other things that my natural abilities lie in the realm of energy and emotions. And so I have the ability to tune into those things when I'm working with people, to the point that I freaked people out. You know, just and it's also interesting that I think there's some funny memes out there that basically say, you know, empaths are good BS detectors because you know, you're like your mouth is moving, but that's not what your energy is saying.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Right. Exactly. I hear that a lot. Yeah, that's a good one. Um, let's see. I had some other questions on the top of my head, and it went right out the other. um, wow. All right. And those who are tuning in late to Strange Oddities podcast, just want to go over with everybody that our lovely guest tonight is Reverend Dr. Stephanie Red Feather. She's an empath educator. She does workshops. She has a really great book out. If you go to her website, bluestartemple.org, her book is The Evolutionary Empath. She's got information on her website how to get the book, and if you want to learn the tools of the trade of empathic abilities and how to, you know, not so much hone in on those abilities, but to, I guess, like figure out again to go over like what that is more about.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book, The Evolutionary Empath, is broken into two parts, and the first part is the bigger picture context of why we're here as empaths. You know, that I believe we're here to help humanity ascend to the next level of consciousness. For those that like to geek out a little bit on some scientific stuff, I do have a chapter that talks about the great year and gets into a little bit more scientific stuff. Talks about why we're an anomaly in Western medicine and Western culture, you know, so just, and a definition, you know, the only directive that my spirit guides gave me in writing this book was create a definition, which of course was like, oh, sure. Okay, great. No pressure.
Right.
But, you know, it actually, from all of the workshops I'd done and the research I gathered, you know, the definition distilled itself out actually pretty easily because, you know, we've heard this term for decades.
Right.
I don't think anybody's ever tried to actually define it. And so that's one of the things that I do as well. And then
Yeah.
the second half of the book is all of the tools, right? Learning about your energy body and performing energy hygiene, right? Clearing your energy field, tending to your container, learning to draw boundaries, all of these other tools so that you can live practically, you know, and function in the world. And in addition, there are 8 guided meditations that are part of the book as well to help you with some of these, so, you know, to somatically experience some of these practices.
Nice. When you were serving in the Air Force, did you have any crazy experiences as far as your empathic abilities while you were in the Air Force?
Um, the way I would define crazy would be more the overwhelm. You know, like I had the sensitivities. There are a lot of things that I, you know, sort of perceived in other realms, but to a certain degree, I had turned a lot of that off. But what I hadn't turned off was just my energy field was an open sponge. And so that was really challenging being in the military, especially
Yeah.
because there's so much heavy, overexpressed masculine
Sure.
energy in the
That's why I thought that
military.
would be a great question to
Yeah.
ask.
But, you know, for me, I think a pinnacle, you know, example is when I was in Saudi Arabia for 3 months.
Mm.
And there's heightened tensions, people away from home. I'm away from home, away from my husband for the first time, feeling everybody else's emotions. I would go, I'd work during the day, I'd go to my home at night and cry so hard that my throat would swell up and I couldn't breathe. And my gums started to bleed from stress. Like, I was literally internalizing all of the stress and the heightened tensions of everyone around me. And I had no idea that I was doing this.
Wow.
I just thought I was, a lot of terms that get thrown at us: weak, fragile, thin-skinned, all of those sorts of things. And so I just thought, I'm not very good at dealing with this.
Right. Yeah, I can totally understand. I just couldn't imagine being in the military and in the Air Force, all that, just like, it's so, it is so challenging. And I can so respect how you handle that and get yourself in a way to get out of that, in order to survive this craziness that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm I'm trying to give like our audience and our newbies out there like the layman's terms of things, so to speak, because some people might be viewing this and be like, whoa, I got a lot to read and learn.
Okay. Well, let me ask this. Something that I can offer that might be helpful is, one of the bigger components of the definition I created is that I distilled down the 5 qualities of an empath. And would that be helpful if I shared those?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. And laugh at me. I'm going to read them out of my own book just so I can make sure I don't.
No, it's all right.
All right. So there's 5 distinct qualities of an empath, and they all express themselves to different degrees in each person. And so, some people are going to go, oh yeah, that's definitely me. And another one being like, not so much, but that's typical. You don't have to peg the scale on all 5 of these to be an empath.
Right.
So the first quality is our ability to merge with and absorb the energy of other beings, right? So whether that's people, animals, anything with life force. And this stems from a very open personal energy field. We come on the planet, we tend to be pretty open. So this is the quality that also, on the flip side, causes us to take on everybody else's emotions, and have struggle with boundaries. The second quality is that we have a highly sensitive nervous system, which, that may sound kind of like, well, duh, nervous systems are supposed to be sensitive. But for empaths, it's like somebody took the dial and turned it up to 200.
Way up. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And so it can cause us to be very prone to overwhelm and overstimulation. And so it means that radical self-care is absolutely vital for us.
Sure.
The third quality is the great sensitivity we have to the energies around us and an ability to perceive or access subtle information that's stored in those energy fields. And so this is the quality that makes us able to, to connect with the paranormal, to see or speak to the dead, to be a medium, or to, communicate with animals, or see angels or apparitions, or see auras and other people's energy, all of these different other subtle realms that are out there are easy for us to perceive.
Nice.
The fourth quality is the premium that we place on peace and harmony. And that is in our relationships, that's in our home environment, that's within our own selves. And so, in the unconscious years that I talked about, that tends to make us a doormat, right? We don't want to rock the boat.
Right.
So once we become conscious, we can tend to, develop our ability to ask for what we need and set boundaries better. But that peace and harmony is a high on our value list.
Sure. Is that Is that kind of like along the lines of don't go to bed angry at your other?
It can be, yeah. I
Right,
mean, it's going to register differently for each person. One of the ways that it shows up for me is I'm very, especially because I'm a shamanic practitioner and I work with people around the world and I'm, calling on the energy spirits that are around me. I am constantly tweaking stuff in my house. Oh, the energy flow doesn't feel right. I'm moving knickknacks around and rearranging furniture and changing a color and, because I need the outer and the inner to be harmonious together.
okay.
So that's
Right.
one of the ways that it shows up for me. So
Yeah. No, it's making all sense to me. Yeah.
yeah. And the fifth quality is our big open hearts and a desire to serve others. And so this tends to make us, gravitate towards careers that are focused on service and serving other people. But what it also does is it makes us tend to overgive and over deliver and put ourselves last on the list. And so again, so when I was talking earlier about when we're an unconscious empath, we tend to live from the unhealthy aspects of these 5 qualities, right? And so it's once we become aware we're an empath, then you can see the need for exceptional self-care and managing your energy and drawing boundaries and developing these skills, because otherwise we just kind of collapse into ourselves in an indistinguishable heap from everybody else's indistinguishable emotions
Sure.
and problems and the intense energies of the world around us.
Right. Now, here's a really good question. Like this, I actually want to know this myself. For an empath or a person with abilities, you know how some people are have a hard time articulating their feelings. If they are having these abilities, they are aware, but they don't know how to handle them. But some people are better at articulating their emotions, and some people aren't. What are some of the things you can recommend people to do for people that have a hard time kind of expressing themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Because like for me, I have a hard time expressing myself when I get emotional. So I like to be more expressive rather than kind of like pushing my feelings or emotions down deep, because I don't think it's healthy to kind of store those feelings up that you have, because sometimes those feelings can boil like a big pot of boiling water, and eventually it's going to boil over and explode. So is there any advice for that?
Yeah, and it's kind of a general question, so I have several things to say to that.
Yeah.
So so for some people, they are such sensors, and there's a part of them that remembers, if you will, or identifies back with how we communicate in spirit form, which is more telepathic.
Hmm.
And so for some empaths, language just seems slow and clunky.
Hmm.
And so if that is true for you, not you personally or you, whoever's listening and watching, be compassionate with yourself and understand that might be why it's difficult, is that's not your native tongue, if you will.
Mm. Okay.
So just to understand that. Another issue might be that we've had to suppress or repress or deny so many of those emotions over the years. And so one of the things I tell my clients and students is, especially when you're at the beginning of your awakening or you're going through something intense, you know what happens when you stick your thumb over the end of a hose, right? The pressure builds up. When you
Right.
take your thumb off, whoosh, the water just goes shooting out. And that's what it can feel like with your emotions. Like the emotions are just absolutely, the pressure's built up, and it's like, is it ever going to stop? Is it always going to be this intense? And the answer is no, but understand that they've been backed up for a while. And so
Right.
once you turn the faucet on, there's going to be this period where there's just all this backup needs to come out.
Yeah.
And so I have a third answer as well.
Sure.
And that is, you know, energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just changes form, right? That's
Right.
the third law of, I've just forgotten which law that is. But basically, so if there's emotions that you want to express and you can't get it out verbally, or you're trying to have a conversation and you just feel too hot, too much charge in your body, then go do something to release that excess charge. So whatever that is for you, going for a run or a walk or a bike ride, or go dancing or drum or rattle or do gobbledygook, which basically sounds like, like to just make, all of these are different ways of moving energy.
Yeah.
So when that excess can get discharged, then it's easier to find your words and to get your clarity when the waters are more calm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, totally. You clarified things for me. No pun intended. So, guys, we're coming. I can't believe it's been almost an hour. We got 10 minutes left on the show. Where can people follow you? I want to make sure that we leave plenty of room for plugging where they can follow you, your website, your book, any events coming up, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So again, bluestartemple.org. The best way to stay in touch with everything I've got coming up is to subscribe to my newsletter. I do have an empath Facebook group, which is Stephanie Red Feather's Evolutionary Empath support community. But if you Google me and empath Facebook, you'll find me there. And so
Nice.
That's another place where I communicate regularly with the tribe there, and share bits of stuff and things you do in a Facebook group. I'm not, I'm sorry, I'm not on TikTok, I'm not on Pinterest, I'm not on a bunch of other things. Maybe it's my age, but I tend to value deeper, more intimate, meaningful conversations and communications. And so there's just some parts of social media that don't appeal to me, but I do understand that that's, if I want to reach people and support people, so that's why I am on Facebook. In terms of what I have coming up, the biggest thing, and we haven't had a chance to chat about this much, so I just want to hold this up and talk about it for a second.
Yeah, sure.
My next work came out November 23rd. It is an oracle deck called Empath Activation Cards, Discover Your Cosmic Purpose.
Nice.
And so something that is unusual, not, I'll just leave it at that. Something that is unusual with oracle decks is for the artist and the author to be the same person. And so, I'm just kind of quickly flipping through. I painted all of the artwork in this deck.
Wow.
So it's kind of doubly amplified in terms of the energy. So these are very high vibrational messages. And I also created kind of a secondary overlay. So you can use this oracle deck like you would any oracle deck to pull a card for guidance, or to lay out a spread if you want to kind of look into what's going on for 2022 or relationship or whatever. But I also created it so that you could read through the accompanying book from start to finish as a self-guided initiation into the mysteries of higher consciousness.
Nice.
And so there's this progression that happens as you move through the deck and you move through the cards. And so it's a very, very powerful deck. And I have created a mystery school around this deck where we will be using it, but it's going to be a mystery school that's about how to engage with the 5D frequencies, how to consciously and gracefully be a partner in ascension, because we're all ascending. It's a matter of whether you want to go kicking and screaming, like I did through my spiritual awakening, or if you want to be a willing participant. And so, in my sort of unique fusion, there's going to be the high level perspective, context, big picture, cosmic energies, and how do we make it practical? How do we apply it to everyday life? So that mystery school begins on February 4th. It's not on my website yet, still in development. It's still a little bit early, but again, I point you back towards if you can get on my mailing list or be a part of my Facebook group, that's how you'll get the details of all of that. So that's the big thing that I have coming up. And then I have other, things that I'm always doing, other little workshops and stuff as well. So
Nice. Well, that's awesome, and I wish you tons of best of luck in all that stuff.
thank you.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. I think our conversation was very interesting, and it was a learning experience for myself. And you made me feel like because you're so super smart and talented. Like I just I'm so humbled that you are on my show.
Thank
So
you. Appreciate
yeah,
that.
yeah, no worries. We got a couple minutes left. Any last words or advice for anyone in the paranormal, in empathic area of things? What would you tell people?
Yeah, I would just say the more consciously you can engage, with your gifts and with this bigger picture process of ascension, the better it's going to be. It's real easy, all of us have some vestige of being a victim, right? Feeling like our life was done unto us. Pretty much all of us have had something traumatic in our childhood that's happened, or experiences of being bullied or made fun of or ostracized. And so, one of my coaches said, all of the experiences of our life, the woundings, the traumas, all of the disparate events that don't seem related are actually all perfectly orchestrated to make us the perfect agent of our purpose. And so I just, if it's any inspiration or help to hear, you're here on purpose.
Right.
And everything that's happened in your life is on purpose, and it's serving a purpose, and that you're not a mistake and you're not crazy.
Awesome. That's great. I have to concur with that. Everybody on this earth has a purpose. You may have not discovered that purpose yet, but if whatever, get into that self-care and take care of yourself, and you may end up knowing what that purpose is, but you do have a purpose, and you do have help out there, like um Reverend Dr. Stephanie Red Feather is out there to help people like you. And there's a lot of other ways to learn about empathic ability. Get her book, and go to our website, Blue Star Temple. And I don't know, we'll end it there. So uh, thank you so much, Stephanie, for being on the show. I hope you had I hope you had a good time on the Strange Oddities podcast.
I did, and I appreciated getting to meet with you and to share with your peeps.
Yeah, absolutely. Stay with me on the show. I'll minimize you, and then we'll say our goodbyes after I say my goodbye with my audience, as I make some announcements, as I always do toward the end of the show. Guys, I hope you enjoyed our guest. It's been a blast, and I learned a lot, and I hope you guys did. So it's been fun. I'll minimize you, and we'll say our goodbyes in a little bit. Okay. Here we go. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed another live Strange Oddities podcast with our lovely guest, Reverend Dr. Stephanie Red Feather. She's an empathic educator, and she's got a great book out about the tools and things that you need to learn, or things that you can learn about being an empath. She just gets you on the right path and the guidance that you need, basically, to get on that journey, get on that path, being an empath and learning that stuff. It's really amazing and interesting, this stuff, because my wife and I are still, even though we've been in the paranormal community for a long time and we've been investigating a long time, these are parts of the world that we are just finally starting to learn more about and tap into ourselves. So this is all learning experience for me personally as well. So I want to say that it's okay. You're not alone. You're not crazy. Anyway, guys, don't forget, we have Carlo Russo and Lou Greco from the Uncle Louie Variety Show. We have a pre-recorded uh, podcast interview with these Italian comedians. They are extremely funny. Guys, if you want a good laugh and laugh at Italian comedy, these are the guys you want to go see. They tour all over the East Coast. They are extremely funny. We've seen them live a couple times in person, and just check them out. Go to the Uncle Louie Variety Show.com and get their tour schedule, and you will get tickets. And believe me, you won't regret. I've lost my voice laughing so hard the next day, and my stomach hurts all night from laughing. So, guys, check out Uncle Louie Variety Show and Carlo Russo and Lou Greco, Italian comedians. December 14th, that's next Tuesday at 8 p.m., is going to be scheduled. And also coming up, December 16th. Guys, if you're a fan of Mel Brooks, the famous comedian, he did Blazing Saddles, he did Spaceballs. Let's see what else. A History Around the World. There's so many movies that Mel Brooks has done. I'm a big fan of Mel Brooks. I'm gonna have his daughter, Samantha Brooks, and Alex Steinberg from the Alakazam podcast on the Strange Oddities podcast. So I'm super excited. Cannot wait. I am stoked for that. I hope everybody can tune in December 16th. And then I'll announce the other shows for the end of the year, and we'll finish out 2021. I can't believe we're at the end of 2021 already. Wow. All right, guys, have a great night. I'm gonna play the video, and I hope everybody is be safe and be well. Have a great night. I'm gonna end our show.